Good morning to everyone. We're happy to have you today. Welcome to Calibra and the Searchlights Defeating the Dark Web. We have our guests with us. We'd like to welcome all of you and thank you for taking the time to join us this morning from your various locations. We know that you're busy, so we're glad that you've been able to take the time with us. This morning, we've got a host of surprises, an action-packed morning, and we're happy if you're able to stay with us for the duration, which is 2 hours. To start us off, I'll just give some introductions. So presenting from our Calibra Solutions side would be Mr. George White, our Managing Director. We have Mr. Nick Savage, the Searchlight Cyber's Head of Infrastructure in Security and Compliance, who is presenting on behalf of Dr. Gareth Owenson and will be handling the proceedings today. And from the TTPS, we're happy to welcome Sergeant Marvin Walker. So without further ado, I'm going to get stuff started. I'd like to encourage everyone to participate and to feel free to use the chat function as well as raise your hand if you'd like to, if there are any questions during the presentation. I'm going to hand over to my Managing Director, George White, to say a few words to introduce himself and speak a little of Calibra and to give an idea, an overview of exactly what we'll be doing this morning. We're so happy to have you, and let's get right started. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you. Thanks for joining. I'm George White, Managing Director of Calibra. And my first initiative this morning is to announce the partnership with Searchlight Cyber. This takes me back to 2016, when we had an initiative with another UK company called Darktrace. And we've been using Darktrace successfully since then in the fight against cyber threats using their AI-based threat intelligence tool. The dark web, as we will come to know and get further illumination by this morning's event, it's really about giving us a lot more information on the dark web, its increasing importance, and what we need to do to be able to understand what's happening in the dark web and to leverage a tool that can be used for, whether it's for forensic analysis and various other initiatives that will help us to cope with this much more effectively. Right, so next step is for me to talk a little bit about Calibra. We've been in business for 15 years. We're based in Trinidad and Tobago, and we serve the entire Caribbean. We have clients in not only English-speaking Caribbean, but Dutch-speaking, such as Suriname. We're also in Aruba and Curacao and St. Martin, and also trying to start some initiatives in the Spanish-speaking territories, such as Dominican Republic. Our value proposition is really about transforming business to compete effectively in an increasingly competitive market space. And we provide a number of tools as outlined on this slide: cyber resilience, dark web intelligence with Searchlight Cyber, trust intelligence, which is going to be increasingly more important. And we leverage some partnerships there, which we'll talk about in greater depth later. And business analytics, which is about leveraging your data to good effect. Now, in the information security space, this is the bulk of what we do. And we have a number of partners as indicated on this slide. Darktrace, which I mentioned earlier, it's about autonomous threat detection and response with 4 main product components: prevent, detect, respond, and heal. Searchlight Cyber, and of course we have the subject matter experts who will take the deep dive into the different components of Searchlight Cyber. OneTrust is our trust intelligence partner, and data privacy and security advisors are our implementation experts who've been doing this for many years across the US, the UK, and other countries in Europe, and now across the Caribbean in partnership with us. Additionally, in our business analytics initiative, we partner with a leading vendor called Click, and Click has about 40,000 clients globally, very strong in the integration space, and having a very capable data analytics tool that also leverages AI. Excuse me. In the financial application space, we partner with Mimix, a US application software company. And Mimix has the distinction of having over 25 clients in the Caribbean, including 3 central banks, the Bahamas, Barbados, and Eastern Caribbean. We also provide consulting and advisory services, as indicated on the bottom of this slide, where we leverage our extensive experience as IT professionals over many, many years, and we provide strategy and roadmap development and various other services to assist our clients in their various endeavors. This next slide looks at Darktrace, which we mentioned earlier, and it's about 4 product families in the suite that do a number of things. Prevent is about hardening security. Detect, which is about seeing any vulnerabilities on your digital estate. Respond, which is about autonomously taking action to block threats and disarm them from doing any damage to your infrastructure. And then Heal, which was released earlier this month, is doing the very important thing. If you're compromised, then what Heal offers to do is to restore you to normal operational state. But of course, you're going to need the other modules in order to get Heal to work in that regard. OneTrust is our trust intelligence partner. And as we see on this slide, it's about a number of different business areas: privacy, data governance, consent and preferences, IT risk, third-party risk, and all the various other components, including ESG and supplier sustainability. And as you would well know, it's really about sustainability in particular is very important. It's about ensuring that we leave a planet that our children and future generations have something that will keep them going, keep them alive, have some resources available. A very all-important subject that we have to all address. Our next slide looks at our analytics platform with our partner Click. 2 main components: data integration, which is about extracting data from various source systems without limits, and then utilizing that data to generate all kinds of analytics, whether we're talking about visualization and dashboards, utilizing AI with augmented analytics and machine learning, and having a platform that meets the current needs of the business, which is about cloud or hybrid or on-premise for those who still want to keep their data in-house. And this next slide looks at the many benefits of Click as a platform, leveraging its many features. Our partners, and this slide looks at how we extend our technology and business capabilities via our network of partners. And you've already had some exposure to them, so need not repeat. Going forward, this slide looks at most of our clients. We are particularly strong in the information security space. So the vast majority of our customers listed here are using one of our information security platforms and tools. And that's it from me. Again, happy to have you join with us this morning as we dive into Searchlight Cyber and what it brings as a platform. I'll stop sharing and allow the next speaker to present. Thank you.
Thank you, George. Unfortunately, Gareth was due to give this presentation today. He's been called away on urgent business. So you have me. I'm Dr. Nick Savage, also involved with the original research associated with the dark web and Tor that enables us to illuminate the threats and to help business identify what may happen in the very near future with regards to their cybersecurity posture, as well as help law enforcement to gain and gather intelligence and evidence that, frankly, will help bring the bad guys to justice. So if I can just give a little bit of an overview about where we've come from. Gareth and I did some research back in 2013, so bit of history. I was interested in Bitcoin at the time. It was new. Didn't really know what the value of it was. And I figured that there may be some relation between the mentions of Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin. So as a predictor to be able to do that. And that involved writing some things that will go along dark web sites in order to extract the data that we were looking for. In the period of doing that, we found out loads of things about how the dark web was being used. We found lots of information about the threats on the dark web. In particular, we found lots of information that was of interest to law enforcement. So as a part of that, we contacted law enforcement and realized that they needed some help in being able to identify malicious actors that were operating on the dark web. And so that led to the founding of Searchlight Cyber in 2017. That is offices in the UK, so we're headquartered in the US. We also have offices in the UK that participate in the development of the products that we offer. So what we do is build upon a strong technological research foundation that has evolved over a number of years to the critical mass that we have now. Can we just go back to the previous slide a sec? Cool. And that encompasses the engineering things that we do, so some of the proprietary methods that we use in order to gather intelligence, some of the things that we have in terms of being linked with defense, and then some of the other aspects we plug into it from academia. In doing that, we've been working with law enforcement, governments, charities, industry, and our aim is to protect society from the threats that we've seen on the dark web. There is a little bio there of Gareth as well. Just a background towards the expertise we've got at Searchlight Cyber in being able to offer the intelligence that we're able to our partners. Okay, so what we offer is right at the bottom of this slide. We are able to go on to the networking capabilities of the dark web. We're also able to go on to onion sites that are hosted on dark web. We're able to get access to sites that are difficult to get access to. We refer to as being the deep web, and we extract lots of information. So we extract information about what people are posting, what people are pasting there. We extract information about traffic that is traversing the dark web. We're able to extract information from marketplaces where people are selling access that they have already gained to host machines. We extract information about what people are talking about, so the chat sites, all of the onion sites that exist. And I have an example later of an onion site that we found that the owners thought was private, was secret. But of course, because of the way that our proprietary techniques, we're able to identify these sites and then pass that information on to law enforcement. And also, what is quite common now to find on the dark web is aspects of leaks. So credentials that have been stolen and then they're leaked and distributed across many people on the dark web. Now we have a platform that sits on top of all this and does loads of interesting things with that data, that then presents it to our two main products. And our two main products are Cerberus and DarkIQ. And the thing that Cerberus is great for is performing investigations on what has happened, or investigations on actors that you're interested in, or investigations on things that you're interested in. So I'm not personally interested, but let's say I wanted to find out what's the market like for some illegal synthetic drug at the moment, which is sold on dark web marketplaces. Well, these are the people that are currently selling, these are how they're advertising, these are the terms that they're using, and that is all presented to you via the Cerberus application. And you can then go off and have a look at those actors, see what they're currently doing, see what else they've done, and also interact with all of the intelligence that we've gathered about those actors that may help you to de-anonymize them if you want to go through the process of possibly arresting them. Now, we found Cerberus to be also, sorry, just go back a second. We found Cerberus to also be really useful when it comes to performing sort of investigations about what happened in the past. I've had the misfortune of being at an enterprise that had a ransomware attack, closed everything down, really, really problematic. On Cerberus, we had an early warning sign about this happening, a week before that information was available. Yeah, and when I first joined Searchlight, that was one of the things that I found. It was, hey, this is really, really good. So in order to take that information that we have available, but present it in a more proactive manner, we've developed DarkIQ. And DarkIQ enables you to get alerts about the information that is the early warning signs of threat actors operating on the dark web that may be targeting you, that may be targeting the type of equipment that you're using and vulnerabilities that exist in that equipment, or that may be targeting particular exploit methods that you need to be aware of in order to bring in additional mitigation or additional protection for your business. So the top layer of this slide is split between the purple on the left-hand side and the right on the red on the right-hand side, which covers sort of the criminal investigations we've been involved with, the fact that we have a lot of data about ransomware actors, ransomware groups, and the tactics and the techniques of those ransomware groups, details about organized crime. So these groups are classified as organized crime syndicates. If you take examples of a fairly large organized crime group, ransomware group called Conti, and they made $170 million in their first year of operation. I mean, these are big enterprises. From a national security point of view, attribution, which we'll talk about in a second, fraud. We also have built into our product the ability for our customers to gain anonymously direct access to the onion sites that may store this information, so that you can, with no risk to yourself or to your own infrastructure, have a look at things that exist on the dark web. Of course, which then helps with things like threat hunting, incident response investigations, protecting critical national infrastructure, and then other aspects of security operations centers or supply chain monitoring to see how your significant suppliers are doing in terms of their security posture. And then lastly, of course, we have access to those leaks information that enables us to provide additional information for helping to prevent account takeover. Okay, so one of our, just move on to the next slide a sec. One of our products is Cerberus, which is on the computer on the right-hand side here. So what is it? As we can see flashing through the screen on the right, it is your ability to do a search using any terms you wish to identify, and that search will then give you information from everything that we gather information from, everything on the dark net, everything on the dark web, or any other dark web that exists, and anything that we've got on the deep web. You can then pivot off those pieces of information that you get out of the Cerberus application to then say, well, I was looking for this. I've now found that this actor is involved. So this user identity on this forum, on this chat page, or these attributes we've been able to get out of an onion site which has existed related to the search term that I'm searching for. And then you can pivot on that and have a look at, you know, distribution around the world that we've seen these actors operate, or distribution of sites where we've seen these actors operate. What we have available to people who purchase services, historical data, so stuff that may exist in the dark web for a short period of time doesn't exist anymore. We've got that data, you know, going back a couple of decades or so, that enable you to perform, you know, historical investigations as well as investigations for information that exists now. And some examples there, you know, CSEA sites, drug marketplaces, cryptocurrencies, ransomware groups. You know, one of the things this is very good for is actor analysis and then correlation with stuff. Intelligence, what we refer to as open source intelligence, so identifiers that help take you from the nebulous environment of the dark web to, you know, identifiers that you can use in the real world. For example, for law enforcement, that will enable you to go and perhaps seize a server that will then give you the evidence that you need to go through a prosecution. So the other product that we have is DarkIQ. And DarkIQ is this application, is this proactive monitoring platform that allows you to do all of the cool stuff that you can do in Cerberus, gather all of that data, but do it in a proactive way. So instead of you going off and having to look for all this information, it is presented to you. And the way that we present it is in the mode of actions. So if we've identified credentials that are associated with people who have identities associated with your company, if we've identified IP addresses that are within your company that are interacting with sources that we deem to be high risk, if we've identified mentions of your company in endpoints that have been compromised, or people are attempting to sell access, then we will present that to you in the form of an action that you will then be able to respond to and take action on. So it sort of dilutes the whole of this dark web into things that are very specific for you that you can then take forward. And the aim, of course, is to spot the threats that you have earlier and enable you to mitigate the vulnerabilities that you've got. Okay, so as a small background, for you know, this is my area of expertise. If you're unfamiliar with the dark web, the dark net, the technologies that are used to provide these tools, they have been originally developed as a means of enabling privacy for people. So the idea was, if I sit on my computer and I open up a web browser and I type in www.google.com, there are many other servers available for you to contact. Google knows the IP address that it is communicating with. And so I've given away, you know, what some people refer to as personally identifiable information. I've given away some information about myself. Depending on the web browser, I may also give other information away to Google. And lots of people thought, do you know, it would be much better if we have a means that people are able to interact between computers and maintain some form of anonymity. And so that developed, or that led on to, you know, some theoretical constructs. And one of those constructs is onion routing, which is what Tor uses in order to establish anonymity. Another construct is garlic routing, which is what ITP uses in order to maintain anonymity. And so we have technical infrastructure that attempts to minimize or effectively eliminate the ability of an end server to know who it is communicating with. Now, having established that as a proposition and having a solution for that, there was also, you know, the additional things added to Tor, which are called onion sites, which are websites that exist only within that anonymization network. So we refer to these, they used to be referred to as hidden services, and they were like web services, and you can put whatever you like, whatever service you want, put it onto a computer, connect it to Tor, and away you go. But now referred to as, you know, onion sites. And these have unique addresses that you can only access by going within the Tor network. and you never leave the Tor network. So when you're going to Google, but you don't want Google to know your IP address through Tor, you exit the Tor network, and then the Google server doesn't know your IP address. With these secret sites, these only exist within the dark web, within that network. So there is an example here. This is an example of it's a version 3 onion address for Tor. And the way that you would gain access to this is actually part of the identifier, the end identifier of this onion. You would then contact a directory service. A directory service will enable you to then, it'll set up an introductory point. The introductory point will set up a rendezvous point through which you'd make a connection to the onion server. And the whole point is both the web server and the end user doesn't actually know the identity or the IP address of either of them. So that's a little bit of a background on darknet, dark web. The fact that it's an anonymization tool, the original idea being to be able to anonymize me interacting with web servers on the internet, and then not only anonymizing the user of the internet, but also anonymizing the website, anonymizing the endpoint. So everybody is kept within the dark web ecosystem. Okay, so one example, I've already mentioned this, is the Onion router network. This is, it's not the first, but it is the network which has established the most number of nodes. So when I say nodes, what I mean is people contribute relays, they contribute computing power in order to maintain the Tor network. And the Tor network has, off the top of my head, around about 10,000 of these relays. And the aim is for a Tor is to build a network of these servers across the internet, and to build it in such a way that it uses encryption that those individual relays don't know, not the next step, but the subsequent hop after that. So there are some concepts. The Tor client, which is demonstrated there, has an encrypted channel to the entry guard, which has an encrypted channel to the middle relay, which has an encrypted channel to the exit relay. And then once you exit the Tor network, you go on to your destination, which is probably encrypted using HTTPS, TLS or something similar, but it isn't encrypted using Tor. And Tor maintains that anonymity by having layers of encryption around the information that you're sending. Now, because Tor maintains lots of channels, that's the way that it attempts to maintain anonymity. I2P is another example. So I2P has, it's a slightly different purpose than Tor. So again, it's people volunteering servers to be a part of the I2P network. And instead of anonymizing individual channels, I2P attempts to combine together cells of information from different people, put it into one blob of encrypted information, and then send it across the network. This is an example of garlic routing on the web. Now, the principle is exactly the same between, for example, Tor and I2P. The idea is to anonymize who is connecting to the internet, and both Tor and I2P also have the ability to anonymize the endpoint, the server that you're connecting with. So, who are the people who use these technologies? The starting point of Tor is privacy. It's about people who wish to make known, for example, Edward Snowden. I actually have them as a famous use. People who wish to make known things that are going on that shouldn't really be going on, but they want to make that known in an anonymous way. So whistleblowers and journalists, there were lots of news agencies that set up dark websites in order to allow whistleblowers to contribute information to those dark websites in an anonymous way. And if you're in a country that has a fair amount of restrictions on network access and where and to whom you are connecting, that is a useful thing to have. So that's one of the things for Tor project. Also have bloggers, IT professionals, law enforcement. It was fairly well known from some of the releases that have come out that some of the security services also use Tor. business people, and then in quotes, normal people. You know, some of the things that we found, so as Gareth and I, when we did our research, was even though that's what the Tor project claims, the majority, and I have to be very clear about how I say this, the majority of requests to particular sites, those sites that were being requested were sites that, you know, either contained illegal material or associated with illegal activities. So that leads us down the road of saying, well, you know, there are famous drug marketplaces around, there's child abuse material on there, and there's also, of course, now ransomware groups that are operating on the dark web, as well as actors who are attempting to sell initial access or attempting to gain initial access to places. Okay. I think I mentioned this before. So how big is the Tor dark web? Well, these aren't the number of relays, it's the number of onion addresses. So this is directly from the Tor project itself. Version 2 onion addresses were sunsetted in around about November 2022, which is why you see a very sharp decrease in the number of version 2 onion addresses. The number of version 3 onion addresses has sort of remained stable, gone up and down depending on what activities are taking place. So there are a lot of sites. There's over 500,000 sites which are endpoints on Tor for you to gain access. So I think I've got some examples of some stuff now. This is an example from a marketplace that sells access to systems that have been hacked. And this is an example of a computer that is available for people to buy. It's remarkably inexpensive to buy this, and what it's listing as a part, which is, you know, of interest to people who wish to find out, well, which of our machines have been owned, and also, well, what can you access as a part of that machine? Well, we've got here a resource that is available, and because the web browser has saved all of the passwords, the person who has control of this machine is able to use those passwords and gain access to other sites. So there's usernames and passwords for ref.mod.uk, passport.twitch, wildrecruitment.co.uk. There's a whole load of usernames and passwords that are available to whoever buys this particular machine. This is an example of a hidden service, an onion that was existing in Tor that we found using some of our proprietary techniques that allows us to see things that are, you know, more difficult to see. So the people who are running this thought they had a private server set up. We were able to identify the private server, and this was an automated carding system that was attempting to brute force pins on cards. So it was sitting there running through this process in order to try and break into people's bank accounts. So we were able to extract some useful information out of it. We were able to get the IP address, we were able to get the phone number, we could pass it on to law enforcement and, you know, provide the information that law enforcement needed in order to, well, firstly, stop these people, and then secondly, hopefully provide some retribution to those people who are affected by, you know, this illegal activity. I think the next slide is a little bit about ransomware, and the sort of things that we see nowadays is ransomware actors posting information on dark web, and their modus operandi, the way that they function is they will encrypt all of your data and then ask you to pay a ransom in order to get the decryption key to enable you to decrypt your data and carry on functioning. But they also now have this triple extortion method where they'll, you know, you have to pay them to stop publishing private data, and you also pay them to stop or not to alert the media or to talk to your suppliers or your customers about the fact that you have been breached. This sort of information is very useful. It's very interesting. We do have access to, we present access to, if you move on to the next slide, the information about negotiations that take place on the dark web. So this is a particular ransomware group. And this is a communication that has taken place between a ransomware group and someone who has been unfortunately hit by that ransomware group, and their files have been encrypted. And the reason why this is included is on the second blue point, the third message down, you can see that the request, so the ransomware request is 40 million. But it's not only that, It's the fact that the ransomware group has done, research on who the people that they've gathered information and encrypted the files, who they are, how much their revenue is, and then they choose the ransom amount based on the information that they've gathered beforehand. So just to finish off my presentation on a little bit about de-anonymization. Like Tor, of course, is an anonymization platform. It allows you to operate hiding your IP address, hiding your identity. But there are a whole host of things that can occur that enable you to be de-anonymized. And some of those are about misconfiguration or default configuration of things you put onto Tor. General leaks of information for what you've presented on chats or in forums. Aspects of social engineering, if you interact with some of these actors, exploits against the ecosystem for Tor. There's a very famous case of vulnerabilities in Firefox that the FBI used a few years ago. So some of the complications with using some of these techniques, of course, is misinformation. If you are able to get hold of a server, that doesn't necessarily get hold of the users of the server, which may be what you should be targeting. And the attacks, whatever you're using, should target the people who are doing wrong. So however you scope the legal right that you have to collect this information, it needs to be scoped appropriately, which unfortunately is one of the things the FBI did incorrectly a few years ago. So on the next slide, I think I've got an example of an actor, and this is an actor who, if you read, this person has been arrested. And so there's, in the public realm, there's news information that you can find about them. And this is an example from our software, our investigation software called Cerberus. And I can do a search on this particular person. I can find the fact that they've had conversations, read their conversations, find out a bit more about them. I can see that they're selling stuff on marketplaces. There's 262 results from the marketplaces. And I've got information in the actors page. And that actors page enables me to then go on to, if we just go on to the next slide, what we present as being this intelligence page about individuals. So we can see a sort of a rank rating, reputation. But what is interesting is we can pull all of this information out about the Telegram identities. And one of the things that we found was a PGP key identity. Having the PGP key identity then led us to the next slide. The next slide gives us an indication about that PGP key. And as you can see, there is the user ID associated with that PGP key. So now we've got an email on a person that previously we only had a name on a forum post. So now that we have an email on a person, we can start doing some other things. And then if we go to the next slide, we have a whole table about all of the intelligence we're able to gather, starting from this one ID and then giving us the ability to say, right, now we have a load of IDs that don't just operate on dark web, but also operate on the clear web. And depending on the scope of your investigation, you may be able to find some more information from that. So that is using our tool. Another way of de-anonymizing, of course, is following the money. Many of the dark web transactions take place in Bitcoin. Bitcoin isn't anonymous. Many of the crypto exchanges require you to walk in with a passport or some form of identification. And it isn't trivial, but it is possible to go from Bitcoin transactions. It's a public ledger so everybody can read it, and then go from and follow the money as it's going from one transaction to the other until you get to the end point. I mean, this has been reported on the news many times. You might have hundreds of different small transactions that take place, but you can still follow it to a point where somebody is converting those cryptocurrencies into fiat currency. And at that point, you can identify the individual. The last thing is, it's not a hugely comical thing. It's just about Firefox. So Firefox is quite well known for having vulnerabilities. There's a couple of quite recent vulnerabilities in Firefox, both of which will allow you to execute remote arbitrary code. And even Pwn2Own, 7 years ago, took Firefox off of its list of browsers that you could demonstrate hacks against, because as I mentioned there, it's too easy to hack. And one of the reasons why I mentioned this on the next slide is because Firefox has been used as a Tor browser, and the FBI used a vulnerability, again, as publicly reported, a vulnerability in the Firefox Tor browser in order to identify users that were accessing a website, a dark web website that they had taken control of. And that dark web website was exploiting the vulnerability in the browser and causing their browser to make another internet connection, which they then were able to de-anonymize. They were able to identify the IP address of the users of the dark website. Okay, so that is, hopefully I'm within time, sort of an overview of, firstly the technologies and the capabilities that we have available. So both from an investigative point of view for what is happening on the dark web, what are the vulnerabilities, what are the ransomware groups doing, am I being targeted, as well as the proactive aspect from Dark IQ, our monitoring system, being alerted to the fact that your company has been mentioned by this particular actor who has a high reputation, and we feel that that is worthy of you looking at that. So we do, I think, just go back to the previous slide. I didn't quite cover the 3 bullet points we have here. We do have proprietary dark web traffic technology, and that gives us the ability, both from the network point of view as well as from the web onion sites, the hidden services point of view. We have a data set which is extensive, going back more than 15 years of live, but predominantly bear in mind that a lot of data doesn't exist for a long period of time on the dark web, so we have that available, and it's a great tool to have to save you money if you're doing incident response, if you're doing investigations. And of course, it's one of the things that we use internally for threat intelligence to identify what is happening and how our threats are going to impact the security posture that we're taking on a day-to-day basis. That is my presentation. We now have if anyone has any questions. I think I had any questions on my presentation, or we'll move on.
Okay, just before we take any questions, just to remind everyone that there is a poll that we're asking you to complete with as much detail as you can so that we can capture the information that we have to, where we can send you a book that uses the terminology that Searchlight employs. And we can clearly see from Nick's presentation, which was quite a lot to digest, but very effective. We can see that the dark web and all of the issues within the dark web are everyone's problem. Just like we say in Trinidad, crime is everyone's business. So take a few minutes just to fill the poll out for us, and we will be very grateful to get the book to you. Thanks. Okay, so I think we can move on now. I believe we're going to go into some case studies, which should be very interesting, and which is where our presentation will light up even more. So we're happy to be able to hand over. We can get right into it, yeah? Okay, so for our case studies, I'd like to introduce as well, I'd mentioned before, and because crime is everyone's business and the dark web is also everyone's business, we're happy to be able to have Sergeant Marvin Walker from our TTPS, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, who will be part of our first set of case studies, yeah? So we welcome Marvin to our panel, and we'd like him to introduce himself and just give a little idea of, you know, the challenges and that sort of thing that he's experiencing or has experienced within the dark web, within all of this that is so new to us, but not so new. So welcome again, Marvin. Nice to have you.
Guys, thank you, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this session as well. And great presentation, Nick. You know, you definitely hit some of the key points in areas that would bring some solutions to our issues that we may be facing. As indicated, I'm Marvin Walker. I'm a sergeant of police attached to the Cyber and Social Media Unit of the Tobago Police Service. And I've been fortunate to be part of a product display given here by Calibra in regards to the solutions offered in regards to dark web investigations. And we have, well, the vision of the Tobago Police Service is to make every place in Trinidad and Tobago safe, which includes the cyberspace as well by our own estimation, because these are areas that people traverse on a daily basis to do the legitimate business, communication, as well as research as well. And these are areas that should be a safe place for persons to use. And we are aware, just like in the real world and reality itself, that persons utilize some of these cyberspace as well to conduct criminal activity, to bully people, to hurt people, to cause some sort of thing for their own personal gain. And in this regard, the TTPS has established that aspect of keeping the cyberspace safe in that aspect. On the points that Nick would have hit in regard to the dark web and how it operates and stuff like that, we have been seeing some trends over the years where it's quite possible that the use of the dark net and so forth has been used to do a number of illegal transactions and stuff like that. We have seen where illicit drugs have been being transferred and transacted through our mailing system, through our ports as well, where a number of discoveries of illegal arms and ammunition has been discovered in those particular areas. And we believe, based on general global trends, that criminals are leveraging the use of the cyberspace, and in particular the darknet and through the Tor browser and so forth, to anonymize themselves to carry out their illicit activities. And some of the points that Nick would have brought in definitely would bring some, how to put it, bring for no pun intended, that searchlight, that even to be able to illuminate the areas of darkness where we may not have been able to see. We utilize a number of open source techniques as well, but some of the benefits that comes from commercial tools such as this far outweighs, you know, that human manual sort of data collection and evidence collection that we may have to go through on a daily basis. The leveraging of the AI aspect in terms of where one can monitor the network, just plugging in your parameters in terms of your searches, and the tool being able to just give that feedback or that data information as it relates to the items that are found on the net is a very, very, very good thing.
Yeah, brother. Yes. So you all can still hear me, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi guys, you still hearing me?
Yes, we can.
Right. So yes, thank you very much, Alex. Yes, so the leveraging the aspects of this tool will very much benefit um any person. I'm not only speaking of it from the law enforcement perspective as well, because just the same way law enforcement steps in when there is a victim. And if you, member of a company, or owner of a company or business, can leverage even to harden your particular network, well, then there will be less victims for us to provide that assistance for. So the benefits of it goes in a full circle as well, where persons can utilize the intelligence gained from the threat intelligence gained from utilization of the tools displayed, presented here today, utilization of those tools to harden their networks, to gain insight and a foresight as well in going forward. And not only in terms of threat intelligence and so forth, it could help as well. I see the benefits of it in helping in terms of marketing and understanding the trends of what is happening out there. Jumping back to the law enforcement perspective as well, um, we see persons falling prey to scams, falling prey to the ransomware issues in terms of ransomware and stuff like that. And I recall going on to one of these sites and seeing some, without going too specific, but seeing some local information that was initially compromised, and now it's out there on the dark web itself. And with the use of these tools here, it make it easier to identify these things, identify who are the threat actors, the areas that they are coming from and stuff like that. Some may think that locally here in Trinidad and Tobago that persons not that tech savvy, not that um have that full understanding of how the internet works and the dark web and the deep web as well. But there are persons are getting educated, persons are even taking advantage of the hacking for hires that are sometimes advertised in the dark web and these other areas, where persons utilize these skills and the tech savvy persons to conduct their illicit activity. Just like in the normal world where persons, hire hitmen and stuff like that. And it is a problem. And we can foresee that issue becoming more prevalent as information about the dark web and its usage and so forth, where persons are a little more educated about the use. And same way persons are more educated and they could strengthen their position and protect themselves. We have to be mindful as well that the criminals as well are also exploiting these weaknesses as well. Yes. So this product, I was really excited when I got the opportunity of being part of the initial display, and even getting into a little deeper dive in terms of how the product works and stuff like that. Because as you know, for the police service, our focus is in terms of gathering that intelligence that can possibly be used in for evidential purposes in court and stuff like that. And leveraging the amount of data, the type of data that is gathered by the tool, we could use it, to really go forward and prosecute in that aspect. Nick pointed out that example where they just started off with a username and was able to work its way through other aspects in terms of getting the IP information and stuff like that, and was able to attribute the whole usage of the illicit site and so forth back to a particular user. And that is great, great, great stuff. To move from the anonymous area over to actually, it was able to identify persons or identify the perpetrator in that aspect. So great example there, Nick. In a real world sense, things, these types of investigations, a lot of times may end, where we unable to identify the person and stuff like that. And there are instances where we have been able to identify persons, but having the tool to kind of ease that process, having the tool to help us along the way in that fight, will be going in a long way in terms of dealing with that overall scourge. And the aspect of ransomware and the usage of Bitcoin in specific transactions. And we have seen through reports made that different other agencies, fraud squad and so forth, in regards to these groups that, offer Bitcoin for sale and enter in these Ponzi type schemes and stuff like that, and being able to trace the money, follow the money, you find the perpetrator and stuff like that. So these are areas, because we more and more, we already in the digital age, we're just going deeper inside of it. Yeah. So thank
correct,
you very
Marvin. Let
much
me
for
interject if you don't
allowing me
mind.
to express my perspective in the use of this tool from a law enforcement perspective, and being able to, let's be part and be here to learn and educate and edify ourselves. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Marvin. I'd like to invite Nick Savage, Searchlight, to join this discussion, knowing that he will also have some points to add to what Marvin has on the benefit of TTPS and the wider citizenry. So again, welcome, Nick. Thanks so much.
Okay. Thanks, Marvin. I was making some notes, but it seemed like you made so many points. I'm not going to keep up with all of them. But in particular, what we found, so that the Cerberus investigation platform, the ability to be able to identify individuals, that's great, because that gives a target point. But it's not just about that. It's about the other metadata that we've got. So the markets. See, well, what is currently being sold? What is currently being sold of interest? Are you able to, ships to a particular geographic region? Are you able to identify which geographic region, particular sellers will ship to? Do you fall within that geographical region? And not only that aspect of market, but what terminology are people using for the description of whatever products that they are selling, and what volumes are we talking about in terms of what they offer? I mean, when people ask what I do, so I do say, well, we help, of course, capture, it's just really nasty people that exist in the world, and that's a good feeling. That's a great feeling. So my hat off to you in that. But the thing that we can help with, of course, is the visibility to, where people need to sell. People need to be able to advertise whatever product it is that they're selling. What we found most typically illegal on the dark web. Having visibility to those marketplaces gives you, you can now see it. Now, the visibility to the marketplaces then, of course, gives you access to the way that individuals interact, the names they choose for themselves, the other intelligence that we can gather about who they are, and other identifiers that we can gather about who they are. And so there's that aspect that actually moves then into, okay, we've now got some means of, if we choose to go down that route of making a prosecution or arresting somebody, we've got the ability to use that information. Then from the other side, it was, when you said, it's good for people to be proactive, and that's going to save time, because we're not then involved in high-tech investigations of company X, Y, or Z, or public service X, Y, and Z that have unfortunately been breached. And so this, I was thinking about a law agency recently that has rolled this out to local law enforcement officers, people that have no technical background whatsoever, in order to help them with their regional, what they're doing regionally. But the proactive monitoring, of course, from DarkIQ helps companies prevent a breach of their systems. And in particular, I keep going back to a place that I used to work at and seeing, well, this trigger, this one thing, one little bit of identifier, and the fact that it is tied to this person or this identity and this thing in this way, that was 7 days notice before a breach happened. 7 days is a long time. Like I would say, well, it's not very long at all, but it is a long time to go, right, we can cancel this identity, we can change this endpoint, we can prevent someone from being able to access it through this initial access broker, which is selling this access. And the other thing we didn't realize, also, if you have these initial access brokers, it's a number of people that actually buy that access and then do something on the end network. So maybe more than one person that's bought access and is then attempting to do things, and more than one ransomware group that is attempting then to ransom an end company. That's not a nice situation for the company to be in, because then who are they actually interacting with? Who has done this to this server and this to this server over here? So from a law enforcement side, it's good to hear your positive comments about how we can help you. But of course, we can help, as you mentioned, businesses as well. We use the term shift left. Be more aware, more proactive at the reconnaissance stage, at the identification of vulnerabilities being exploited, at the pack of tools that are being sold that will target systems that a company may actually have, and the proactive nature that DarkIQ will help companies to prevent them from being breached. I think I've covered a fair few of the points. Yeah.
You have, Nick. Can I ask you? Sorry.
Oh yeah. That's the one thing I burn in. So we have been strengthening our position in dealing with child sexual abuse material, prevailing over both the dark web through torrents in terms of peer-to-peer networks and stuff like that. I just as like the narcotics, ammunitions, and these sort of things, and other fraud and credit card stuff, can the tools also help in that regards in either identifying CSAM, sites and so forth that locals are sort of, exploiting and stuff like that, because it is an offense here. The term is child pornography, but internationally we try to use the term child sexual abuse material. How can the tool help in terms of tackling that?
Yeah, Marvin, this was one. If you read the paper that Gareth and I published back in 2015, honestly, it was one of the most depressing days of my life when we said, "Oh, so what is the vast amount that we're looking?" And the number of at the time we referred to it as child abuse. Of course, now CSAM is the term that we use. Anyone who uses the term child pornography, I'm very, very unhappy with that as a term. This is abuse. It's not. So we do. We do have that information. We do work with law enforcement in order to help, from the point of view of identifying people that are currently being, we have in the past that are currently being used. So being able to help young people, and also people who are both making as well as distributing or just owning this sort of material. So it's a very sad part of the world, and it's a conversation I don't feel very comfortable having in a public forum like this. But it is, we do cover that within our data set, and it is used by law enforcement at the moment.
Nick, I was interested in understanding a little bit more as we're doing a deep dive of how Searchlight can help other industries and other ministries, seeing that the dark web and the stuff that can be attained there is everyone's problem. So if you could touch a little bit on that, I'd be happy. Thanks.
Okay, so I mean, some of the things that we've seen as being the most successful in helping has been this aspect of early signs, and that is early signs because, I mean, worst case scenario, you as a company are named, and you're named as either you have been breached and you don't know about it, so you can find out through the tools that we've got, or that somebody is about to perform some operation on you and you don't know about it, or somebody has gained access to your systems, and that is one of the things that they're attempting to sell. So the initial access broker type of thing. So that helps with this ability to prevent a more significant impact from that initial access, that endpoint being breached, moving on to the rest of the systems. I mean, I don't know if anyone on the call has been through a ransomware attack, but it was so much more devastating than I'd ever anticipated. And this was at a very large institution. There were around about 5,000 staff, around about just over 1,000 servers. Everything had to be turned off because the scope of the intrusion wasn't known. So I don't know if that over there has been impacted. I don't know if that over there has been impacted. I don't know if that over there has been impacted. Turn everything off. That's fine. Everybody understands that. What I didn't anticipate was how difficult it was going to be to turn everything back on again, because nobody was willing to turn anything on until we knew that it was safe to turn this device back on. And that took weeks. So the cost, the overall cost of this breach was massive in comparison to a very, very trivial fix, a very trivial solution based on the information that was available, 1 week.
Just asking if you could hazard, I guess, quantify what the losses were like, because we Trinis hear dollars. So when we hear that dollars have missed, it really is effective,
We're in the millions. And that's, in the UK, a large percentage of that is covered by insurance. But the millions is the downtime, the millions is the cost of the investigation that takes place. So people who then review all the servers that we wish to have brought back online, and that cost is probably much higher than I had anticipated before. Because that's, turn everything off. Great, I understand that. Turn it all back on again. No, please don't do that until you can make sure that it's not been infected. That's going to take some time. That's going through terabytes and terabytes worth of data and lots of systems across the entire infrastructure of that zone. And saving that is, it's a very small cost to save in comparison to my estimate of multi-million pounds worth is a currency in the UK, being lost because of the downtime. Not least, unfortunately, getting into the news as well. So the reputational damage is another aspect that would need to be considered. I'm not so good at quantifying that, but if and I wasn't the information security person at the time, if I was the information security person at a place that had been breached, I wouldn't want the company publicly known that I had been breached, because I don't want to be breached.
Correct.
I wouldn't hide it, but that consequence is another aspect. Well, I'm not very comfortable dealing with company X, Y, and Z because they were in the news last week about being breached. And there's tools that you can use that have had, unfortunately, things added to the tools, which now I myself say, please don't use that tool. Because this has happened in the past, and it's that consequential impact, which is another thing, which is difficult to quantify, but it's there. And if the solution is so easy because we have some proactive monitoring in place that enables you to, change this endpoint, reset some credentials, then that's great. That's worthwhile.
Thanks so much for answering.
Cool.
So I am almost positive that there must be some questions coming out of what has been presented thus far, so anything that needs to be clarified. So we'll open the floor for questions. Anyone that has anything, I'd love to hear. You can use your hand feature. You can unmute your mics as soon as you do. or you can type into the chat directly and we'll address the questions. But to kick us off, I have some questions. So Nick, can I ask, you mentioned that Searchlight has been used globally or is being used globally in terms of law enforcement agencies. Can you say if there are any right now? Obviously, we know that there's going to be a lot of secrecy because we don't want to reveal tools to the general public or to the threat actors. So can you give us an idea of, how many or the extent of law enforcement agencies that are involved with you in terms of fighting the dark web and mitigating the negativity that comes out of it?
So I'm not confident in naming any work.
I think you would be.
I don't know if you ever work with law enforcement, but they're also not very comfortable with you saying
Correct.
who they are. We do work with national agencies for a number of countries around the world. We also work with regional agencies, and we also work with multinational agencies who do some facilitation. So it's probably more than you might expect, but I'm just a bit uncomfortable giving a full
Understood.
number.
Understood.
I hope that from a national point of view and what national law enforcement is interested in, of course, is organized crimes, things that are they're going to have an impact of such a scale that is of national importance. And then regions, depending on how you break up a region, how large the country is, we are involved with regional agencies as well as wider agencies, which are multinational agencies that provide support and can provide some direction to national law enforcement.
Okay, great. That's answered. And before anyone else jumps on, I'm filled with questions this morning. Tell me something. Can you tell me if Searchlight Cyber is used for selected law enforcement segments or for all law enforcement segments? What's your view?
So we had a view originally that we were going to be used by particular groups within law enforcement, and that hasn't actually been the case. So we thought, we're going to be involved with crimes against children, we're going to be involved in drugs, we're going to be involved in guns, we're going to be involved in people trafficking. And we've actually seen our product be used, so Cerberus be used in other cases, so by law enforcement agencies that don't cover those areas necessarily. So outside of those, in order to track other aspects that they can find, other information that they can find on the dark web that is going to help them with whatever criminal case that they're doing. And I don't know if you're familiar with particularly what's happened in the UK, which I'm probably much more aware of than worldwide with regard to digital forensics. So, I'm arresting somebody for murder, and as a part of arresting that person for murder, I pick up all of the electronic devices and I send them off to the forensics lab, and the forensics lab then give all the information from those electronic devices, which may help in the case. That's led to a huge backlog of most of the labs in the UK because there's so many electronic devices and there's so much information to get out. And it may be that we're finding the same sort of thing when law enforcement are investigating cases. Well, let's have a look to see what we can get from the identities that we found on this device over here, which shows that they've accessed this website over here. And let's see what we can find on Cerberus about their access, about their identity, which is, we don't know about this because we don't have inside information on the cases that they're working on. How is that related to what we're investigating over here? But the agencies we're working with are wider than I had honestly originally expected.
Gotcha. Another question, it just dawned on me, using Trinidad and Tobago as an example. Could you say how Searchlight Cyber could be applied to government bodies like prisons, Coast Guard, the Defense Force, the military, that sort of thing, Army, our Defense Force? How could that be applicable there?
I mean, so I think there are a number of ways. Like if you're looking at a part of the remit of whatever agency is looking at is preventing illegal material from entering into the nation boundaries, the sovereign boundaries. And you say, right, so that's of interest perhaps to the Coast Guard, that's of interest perhaps to whoever deals with the Postal Service, to say, we are aware of, we have found from whatever agency within Trinidad and Tobago, we have found people who are buying these or this illegal material on the internet, which is in a physical form, then has to physically be sent to the islands. And then that knowledge, of course, then contributes towards the intelligence of whatever operations are functioning and whatever the Coast Guard or the Postal Service wish to do in order to perhaps be more alert to these sort of things entering into the territory. And then when it comes to, for example, military services, saying, okay, military services operate, well, government operates on a scale of risk. Military services operate on a scale of risk when it comes to operations and entering into buildings or sites. So while the information you can gather from the dark web can contribute towards your appraisal of risk. So you can say, oh, the risk is heightened at the moment, and it's heightened because of these conversations, which aren't in the public, which we've been able to identify on the dark web, which has named X, Y, or Z minister or X, Y, and Z person working for the army, and is actively an area that we think is possibly going to go ahead, and we're going to change our operationally what we do in order to take account of those risks that we've identified. And I know I've worked for a military institution in the past, and it was, you walk into the building and there's a nice big sign saying, the current threat level is X, Y, or Z. And then you are greeted with people with big guns or bigger guns with threat level slightly higher, or you're searched a bit more thoroughly if the threat level is slightly higher. So it's those tweaks that you make to the threat levels, physically within within Trinidad and Tobago. And then if you have, and I apologize that I don't know, and it may not be public knowledge, but if you have something within the entry points into, so the network entry points coming into Trinidad and Tobago, if you have anything which is government controlled associated with those, and then you can start to refine the sort of things that you're doing. And I don't know if the government does anything like this, but then that gives you the ability to change some of the threat levels of information, which is coming, information, not physical information, which is coming into the islands.
A wealth of information to digest. And we're glad too that this helps us to be a step above the criminals, because we know that the criminals are hot on our heels every day, learning new tactics, learning new strategies, and even learning the new things that are defending. Tell me something, as much as you said we'd like to catch the bad guys, which is everyone's aim, and not to be part of the bad, to go toward the good. Let's move toward the light. Tell me something. Is the information that can be captured by Searchlight Cyber admissible in a court of law?
I wouldn't be able to answer that question without being more of an expert in how that evidence can be admissible in whichever jurisdiction that court operates in. So what I can say is, actually, I'm not even too sure what I can say. The intelligence that we can provide can lead you to the evidence which is required. But then, of course, when you're collecting evidence, you need an appropriate warrant in order to collect that evidence in the most appropriate means. So for some of the, as an example, for some of the law enforcement agencies that we work with, before they can even use a platform, they need to put the warrant number that they're currently using in order to gather the information that they need for the case that they're currently working on. So I'm not, I don't know the rules for the whatever jurisdiction the evidence will be required to be presented, but it is information which will either lead you towards evidence, or if the rules allow it to be evidence. But if it is allowed to be evidence, then of course there needs to be a warrant that evidence is collected in the correct means, and we have, as I mentioned, we have a means that that warrant number can be entered into as a part of the login process to say that this person who is operating in this case is doing so with the with the full required needs for that evidence.
Okay, great, thank you. And tell me something, Nick. Is there any possible way to utilize Cerberus to be able to identify threats against our own police force with automated alerts?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So there's two. I mean, so Dark IQ will give you the ability to very narrowly specify here is the information that I want on this network infrastructure, on these identities, and then send you alerts. We do also have some functionality within Cerberus that allows you to set up alerts for particular things being mentioned that then will send you the information about those mentions in a very similar way to the functionality of Dark IQ, but focused much more on humans, people that are posting things online.
Okay, and in your presentation, I remember you noting that Firefox has the most vulnerabilities. Can you say which has the least?
No. So I don't think it's a case of more or less.
Okay.
It's a case of, it is noticeable that because it's a bit of a problem because Google have a very good zero dating. So Google spend a lot of money maintaining people with technical capabilities to identify vulnerabilities in their products. So you say, well, we found more vulnerabilities because we've been looking for them, which is different. Like the scale of those vulnerabilities and how those vulnerabilities are exploited is different to what has been seen, for example, from Mozilla's Firefox. And I'm not, please understand, I'm not giving a personal opinion here. This is something which has come from both, look at the vulnerabilities that exist, but also externally, the classical hacking competition point to own, you can't do it against Firefox anymore. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. I have one more question, or maybe two.
Yep.
Although I seem to have all the questions, I'm not too pleased with that. This question that I have comes from the place of maybe an enterprise or other industry. I already have cybersecurity software. What sets Searchlight apart? Help me here. Why do I need you? I already have something.
Okay, I mean, depending on what you have will be the level of information that whatever that product does. What we offer is the ability to get early indications of compromise or possible compromise, as well as the ability to investigate, frankly, a data set which doesn't exist in very many places and doesn't exist at all because the stuff which we've got no longer exists elsewhere. And there's a few other things, like, for example, our stealth browser that enables you to anonymously go off and have a look at sites on the dark web to investigate yourself. So I think, well, it's about that ability to both investigate something if you want to know afterwards, or if you want to do your investigation beforehand, as well as set up the ability to be alerted to the fact that that risk level has changed because the threat has changed, and that system of alerting is quite critical. It's external. It's not waiting for something on your network, in your network, by which time you may have matters of hours. You've got days to take some action before that thing occurs.
Thanks, Nick. So it's safe to say that Searchlight Cyber is complementary to the battle for cyber resiliency, correct?
I would hate to say that anyone has a dominance in there, because, as you mentioned, there is constantly evolving means, constantly evolving techniques, and constantly evolving like threat intelligence. This knowledge is something which is really quite young in terms of a domain area, and that is something that we are at the forefront at, to be able to provide the intelligence that you need about the threats in order to make a better risk judgment for yourself, your company, your country, the operations that you're currently working on.
Understood. A lot of information to digest, a lot, but I'm sure that it's been extremely helpful to our listening audience. Are there any questions from the floor generally? Hey guys, don't hit me all at once with all of these questions. I'm sure that even the panelists would have questions that can be filtered, the external panelists. Marvin may have some questions, George. Anyone that's on the panel that would need to put some questions forward to Nick and the experts, or anybody that's in our listening audience, we'd love to filter questions from you. Although I think I may have asked everything for everyone, I'm not sure. Forgive me.
Yeah, I have not so much a question, but in terms of I'm just looking at it from, like you say, from a business entity perspective, and does the tool or does the company Searchlight need that sort of understanding the network infrastructure of the company before it could really do its work? The tools does its work. Do you have to do any kind of network mapping before you really think, or is it just a straight off implement and the AI functionality in the tool, does its work? What sort of like infrastructure work needs to be done in order for it to be effective?
Okay.
Positive that Nick can answer that question.
Yeah, Marvin, I mean, it's a very good question, and I think it's a slightly different way for the deployment for our tools. It doesn't require you to physically add anything or change your infrastructure or change the functionality of any of the endpoint devices that you're currently using, but it does require you to put the information into the tool so that we are monitoring whatever parts of the infrastructure, hopefully the whole of it, that you wish to be monitored, and that is both from a networking point of view as well as the attributes, the company attributes, the products that you're working on, the people that you think are the most important towards those products, the things that you've identified as being a part of your risk profile that you wish to monitor on what is unfortunately an area where much illegal activity occurs, which is in the on the dark and the deep web. So Marvin, to answer your question, there's no need for us to know the infrastructure. There's no need for us to know the way it is connected, or for a company to put agents within any of their endpoints. But we do need the information about the IP addresses, the access points, any top level URLs. We can work out the rest of any domains you've got based on the top level domain. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, definitely it did. I saw two questions posed in the chat there, one to you, Nick, and one to me from Alex.
Yep.
And to answer the first question in regards to how important it is in terms of delving into the dark web and utilization of these tools. And it's simply because we are going further into the digital realm, and persons are getting a little more educated about the usage of these areas, both for illicit and good activities as well. So law enforcement has to position themselves to start protecting these areas, making these areas a safe space to operate, or at least just like you're doing your search, and you need to know the areas where you need to go and search to identify certain issues and threats and stuff like that. So yes, Alex, is very important to think, especially coming out of COVID, you saw that uptick. A lot of YouTube videos out there and tutorial videos out there on how to go both the illicit and the good ways, So persons, I think so, law enforcement have to position themselves to deal with, the rise in occurrences and usage of these platforms. The second question was to you, Alex. Alex, Nick, sorry, and I'll read it. Should CISOs within enterprises be concerned about dark web threats?
Okay. I hope that question is easy to answer, because the answer is yes. The evidence that I've given personally is the information that we're able to obtain from the dark web and from the dark net. So that is dark web traffic, which is coming to endpoints within my company, as well as the information we can gather from people interacting on forums, chats, marketplaces, etc. Both of those are critical to me being able to assess my risk profile, and for me being able to make those tweaks to ensure that I'm mitigating the risks that I've got to my company. But I don't think it's just me that feel that they are critical to helping me be able to protect the resources, the information I'm there to protect. Because we did a recent survey of CISOs, and 93% of CISOs felt that dark web threats were important to be known, that they were concerned about threats and information they were able to obtain from the dark web. So that's both from a networking point of view and from the information that you can gather from both Cerberus and DarkIQ. That was critical to helping the management of the threat mitigation that's put in place based on the risk that we can identify for you.
So Nick,
Thank you.
if I may, Nick, I have a question.
Yep.
I read recently where the World Economic Forum and other research groups, there's a projection that in a few years, economic impact of dark web and related activity will fall just below the US and China into a number 3 position. Now, that has enormous implications for the world at large. Is there any global initiative to sort of counter that and sort of ensure that this is not going to happen?
I mean, global initiatives will be, there'll be a few places that I could imagine will take some lead on this. But one will be an agency that can provide assistance to national police. And so they are involved, they are aware, and they do work with some of our tools. If you say it in a very similar way to the internet, I mean, we need the internet in order to support the dark web. The dark net runs, of course, on the internet backbone, but the dark net has that means of ensuring an anonymity for the end users as well as the hosts of services that operate. And if you talk, that is a critical part of the way that the darknet runs. If more things, if that explodes more, so there's more capacity, there's more resource, there's more people using, and there's more people using in a way which means that they are gaining some economic benefit from it. As an example, I was shocked by this stat: Conti making 170 million within their first year of operating. If you look at Clop, I don't know if you've come across Clop, but they've been exploiting the MoveIt vulnerability. They've been so successful they can't keep up with the number of people that they're ransoming. So their webpage literally says, "Please be patient, we will be with you shortly." Incredible. Like, when you look at the scale and the speed with which this is happening, I don't doubt the World Economic Forum's analysis and appraisal of the situation.
Okay, thanks, George. I don't think there are any more questions from the panel. from anyone in the audience? Is there any question? If not, we'd like to wrap up. We'd like to thank you for taking the time, spending your morning with us on a Thursday, close to the month end. So we know that you've taken some valuable time and you've given that to us, and we are appreciative. We encourage you to fill out any feedback forms that are sent to you with as much detail as you can so that we can tackle that subsequent to this presentation. And we just like to remind you that there are ways to reach out to us that will all be available to you once you fill out the information. So thanks again, everyone. Thanks to the panelists. Thanks to Searchlight Cyber. Thank you very much to Dr. Nick Savage, to George White, my managing director, and to TCJ Events. And we thank you all for your attention. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you.